Tolani. My breakfast is not here. You want me to faint? I'm coming, Tolani replied quietly from the backyard, her hands already black with soot from the firewood stove. Auntie Ronk appeared in the doorway, her wrapper hanging loosely, her tone sharp enough to cut steel. So it's now you're cooking. You want to kill my daughter. The firewood was wet, Tolani explained gently. Excuse. Everyday excuse. If you were truly your mother's daughter, would she not be ashamed in heaven? Tolani bowed her head. I'm sorry, Ma. Sorry won't fry the yam faster, the woman hissed, turning away. Hey, Bestie. You know how life in Africa can be. Full of drama, love, and unexpected turns. Today's story is one of those that will make you laugh, think, and maybe even tear up a little. So grab your tea, get comfortable. Don't forget to tell us where you are watching from in the comment and let your bestie tell you a story. The sound of the morning sweep echoed through the small compound in Ikorodu as Tolani dragged her broom across the cement floor. Dust rose around her bare feet, turning golden under the sunlight that leaked through the mango tree outside. She was 22, tall, slim, skin the soft brown of palm kernels, and her eyes looked like someone who had cried so often that tears had learned to hide. Ever since the fire 5 years ago that took her parents and everything they owned, she had lived under the roof of Auntie Ronk and Uncle Sun Canme. First she thought it would be temporary. But 5 years later she was still sweeping, still cooking, still invisible. Inside, Chioma, Auntie Ronk's only daughter, yawned lazily. Tolani. My breakfast is not here. You want me to faint? I'm coming, Tolani replied quietly from the backyard, her hands already black with soot from the firewood stove. Auntie Ronk appeared in the doorway, her wrapper hanging loosely, her tone sharp enough to cut steel. So it's now you're cooking. You want to kill my daughter. The firewood was wet, Tolani explained gently. Excuse. Everyday excuse. If you were truly your mother's daughter, would she not be ashamed in heaven? Tolani bowed her head. I'm sorry, Ma. Sorry won't fry the yam faster, the woman hissed, turning away. When the food was done, Tolani packed vegetables into a basin, tied a scarf over her sleek bun, and walked to Mile 12 Market. The sun was barely up, but sweat already gathered on her neck. She set her tray down beside a line of traders, her voice small. Fresh pepper, tomato, ifo. Around her, other girls her age laughed, adjusting wigs, checking phones. Some even had ring lights for their live sales. Tolani just stood quiet and steady. A woman nearby whispered to another, "Fine girl like this. What a waste. Living like house help." Another woman laughed. "Beauty doesn't feed stomach." Tolani heard them, but her eyes stayed on the customers. She had learned long ago that dignity could hide behind silence. By evening, she returned home with the day's earnings. "Uncle, this is the money," she said softly. Uncle Sun Canme counted it, his eyes narrowing. "This is all?" "Yes, sir. Prices dropped today." He stood. "Or maybe you dropped some into your pocket." Tolani shook her head quickly. "No, sir. I swear." The slap came before she finished. The sting burned across her cheek. Auntie Ronk's voice sliced through the air. "You will not disgrace this family. Be grateful you even have a roof over your head." Later that night, Tolani sat under the lone bulb in the backyard, a small Bible open on her lap. Her father's handwriting inside read, "Keep trusting, Tola." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I'm still trying, Papa. I'm still trying." The next week, the dry season sun burned through the clouds, leaving the streets of Ikorodu glazed with heat. Inside the small sitting room, Uncle Sun Canme sat fanning himself lazily, the sound of the generator humming outside. Tolani stood by the doorway, clutching the day's earnings from the market. "This is the money, sir," she said quietly. He counted the notes, brow furrowed. "This is all?" "Yes, sir. People didn't buy much today." He looked up slowly, eyes hard. "Or maybe you've started stealing small, eh?" Tolani's throat tightened. "No, sir, I swear." The slap landed before the words could finish. Her head jerked sideways. Auntie Ronk appeared from the corridor. "Sun Canme, what happened?" "She brought small money again. This girl will put us in trouble one day." Ronk folded her arms, glaring. "I've told you she has bad luck. Since she entered this house, nothing good has happened." Tolani bent her head, whispering, "I'm sorry." "Sorry won't feed this family," Ronk snapped. Now, go wash the plates before you sleep. The next afternoon, a black Prado SUV rolled into the compound. Dust swirled around its tires as a man in a white agbada and gold wristwatch stepped out. Auntie Ronk gasped. Yezu. Chief Okon. Chief Okon smiled broadly, his stomach rounding the fabric of his agbada. Ah, my people, he greeted, his accent rich with confidence. Chief, you're welcome, Uncle Sun Kanmi said, his voice suddenly sweet. Please sit down, sir. We'll bring malt. Tolani watched from the kitchen window as her aunt and uncle served him drinks, laughing too loudly at every joke. I came to speak about something serious, Chief Okon said, folding his hands. I saw a girl at the market last week. Graceful, quiet, humble. I asked around and they said she lives here. Her name is Tolani. The laughter in the room froze. Ronk forced a shaky smile. Ah, Chief, maybe you're mistaken. That girl. She's just our house help. A very stubborn one too. Chief Okon frowned. Really? She didn't seem that way. Uncle Sun Kanmi added quickly. Our real daughter is Chioma. Educated, beautiful, obedient. That Tolani is just a burden we're carrying. In the kitchen, Tolani's hand trembled on the edge of the tray. Her chest ached. Her breath came slow, steady, quiet. Chief Okon nodded politely but said no more. When he left, the smiles in the house vanished. That night, Uncle Sun Kanmi slammed the table. Because of you, a whole chief walked away. Do you see how you bring bad luck? Auntie Ronk hissed. We'll settle this once and for all. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If she won't bring us pride, she will bring us bride price. Tolani didn't ask what that meant. But the cold in her aunt's eyes told her the decision had already been made. The morning after Chief Okon's visit, the house felt heavier than usual. Tolani swept the compound as the generator groaned in the background. Inside, voices rose and fell. Uncle Sun Kanmi and Auntie Ronk arguing behind half-closed doors. By noon, Ronk's voice sliced through the still air. Enough talk. We'll marry her off before she disgraces us further. Marry who? Chioma asked, stepping out of her room with her phone in hand. Tolani, her mother snapped. Since she can't bring pride to this house, she'll at least bring a husband. Uncle Sun Kanmi smirked, his tone cold. I already know the man. That beggar under Third Mainland Bridge, Olu. He sleeps near the pillar beside the lagoon. Chioma's eyes widened. Mummy. That mad-looking man. Yes, Sun Kanmi said, grinning cruelly. Let the whole street laugh. Let them know she's not our daughter. That evening, Tolani overheard everything while washing plates by the kitchen window. Her hands froze in the soapy water. The laughter inside twisted her stomach. She sat on the back steps long after the generator went silent, the sky turning navy above her. For the first time, she realized there was nothing left to hope for in that house. The next morning, her friend Zainab, Z, arrived breathless, wrapper tied over her jeans. Tola, I heard. They can't do that to you. Tolani smiled faintly, tired. They already have. Then run. My cousin in Ape will hide you. Tolani shook her head slowly. If I run, they'll say I'm stubborn. Maybe this shame will be my last. Z's eyes filled with tears. You don't deserve this life. Tolani touched her arm. None of us do. But God is watching. They sat in silence until the call from the sitting room broke it. Tolani, come here. She entered to find her aunt beaming like it was Christmas. Congratulations, Ronk said, mocking. Your wedding is this Saturday. Prepare yourself. The words hit like thunder. My wedding, Tolani whispered. Yes, Sun Kanmi said. To Olu. Since that's where you belong. Chioma laughed softly. Maybe you'll live under the bridge like royalty. That night, Tolani sat awake, staring at the flickering bulb above the kitchen. Her father's Bible lay open on her lap. She touched his handwriting again. Keep trusting, Tola. She smiled sadly. Maybe this is the end of my story, Papa. But I'll walk through it with my head up. Outside, Lagos slept restlessly. Inside that small house, a girl's life was being rewritten without her voice. Saturday arrived like a funeral dressed as a wedding. The morning sun burned bright over Ikorodu, but the house carried the cold stillness of something cruel about to happen. Neighbors gathered in the compound, whispering behind folded hands. Auntie Ronk had hired Baba Falola, the old man who officiated cheap street weddings, and borrowed plastic chairs from the woman who sold akara. A faded white canopy sagged in the center of the yard. "Where is the bride?" someone asked. "In the room," Ronk replied proudly, adjusting her head tie. "She should be grateful we're even giving her a proper send-off." Inside, Tolani stood in front of a mirror streaked with dust. Her reflection stared back, eyes tired, face calm, heart broken. Auntie Ronk pushed the door open, holding out a crumpled wrapper. "Wear this. It was your mother's. Since you've chosen disgrace, wear her shame too." Tolani tied the wrapper quietly. Chioma leaned on the doorframe, phone in hand, recording with a cruel smile. "Look at you," she sneered. "Bride of the century." The crowd outside grew louder. Laughter mixed with gossip. "She's marrying that madman from under Third Mainland," one woman whispered. "God forbid such destiny," another replied. Then came the shout. "He's coming." Every head turned toward the gate. Olu walked in slowly. His beard was rough, his clothes mismatched. 3 shirts layered on one another and a torn piece of fabric tied around his waist. He carried a stick in one hand and a black nylon bag in the other. Children pointed. Women covered their mouths. Men laughed so hard one of them dropped his drink. But Olu didn't look away. He walked straight to Tolani. His steps were steady, his eyes surprisingly kind. He stopped in front of her and bowed slightly. "Good morning, Tolani." The way he said her name, soft, respectful, made the noise fade for a moment. "Good morning," she answered quietly. "Let us begin." Baba Falola shouted. The ceremony was short. No choir, no pastor, only whispers and mockery. "Do you, Olu, take this woman as your wife?" "I do." "Do you, Tolani, take this man as your husband?" She looked at the crowd, then at the man in front of her. Everyone expected shame. She gave them calm instead. "I do." The compound erupted in laughter. Someone shouted, "Wedding of the year!" Auntie Ronk clapped mockingly. "Finally. The curse has left my house." Olu turned to Tolani, his voice gentle. "Shall we go?" She nodded once. No one told her goodbye. No one followed. Hand in hand, they walked out of the compound, through the dusty street, past people who once knew her as the quiet market girl. The jeers followed, but Tolani didn't turn back. For the first time in years, she wasn't walking home. She was walking away. They walked for nearly an hour, through dusty back roads, past rusted danfos, and beneath the heavy shadow of Third Mainland Bridge. Lagos buzzed above them, cars honking, engines roaring, but down here the world was slower, quieter, forgotten. Finally, Olu stopped beside a patch of uneven ground where the lagoon lapped gently against broken concrete. A small hut stood nearby, made of wood, rusted zinc, and hope. "This is home," he said simply. Tolani looked around. The hut leaned slightly to one side, its roof patched with old banners. There was a mat on the floor, one cracked plastic cup, and a small kettle by the wall. No bed, no window glass, no fan. Just wind from the water and silence that hummed like a heartbeat. "It's okay," Tolani said softly. "I'll fix the roof next week," Olu replied. "There's a stream behind us if you want to fetch water." She nodded. "Do you have a pot? I can cook something." He smiled faintly. "We'll figure it out." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The afternoon sun shimmered on the water, painting gold across the waves. The smell of salt and engine oil mixed in the air. Tolani knelt on the floor and began sweeping sand toward the corner with her hands. "You don't have to do that," Olu said gently. "You must be tired." She shook her head. "If I don't make it clean, I won't feel alive." Olu sat by the doorway, watching her quietly. There was something about the way she moved. Slow, careful, disciplined. As if even brokenness had rules. That night, the bridge lights flickered above, reflecting on the black surface of the lagoon. Tolani sat cross-legged on the mat, her Bible beside her, listening to the soft hiss of the waves. Olu sat on a stone outside, facing the water, his figure outlined by the moonlight. "Are you all right?" she asked. He turned slightly, the wind brushing his shirt. "Yes, I like the sound of water. It helps me think." She stepped outside and sat near the door. "What do you think about life?" he said after a pause. "The past, mistakes, and what comes next." Tolani rested her chin on her knees. "My father used to say water carries people's pain and takes it far away." Olu smiled faintly. "Your father sounds wise." "He was," she whispered. "He died in that fire." "I know," Olu said quietly. "I'm sorry." The breeze carried their silence toward the water. For the first time in years, Tolani felt something close to peace. Not happiness but stillness. She looked at him and asked softly, "How did you end up under this bridge?" He didn't answer at once. Sometimes life pushes you far from where you started. When you try to go back, you realize you no longer belong there. Tolani nodded slowly. She understood. More than he could ever know. Morning sunlight spilled through the cracks of the hut, drawing thin golden lines across the mud floor. The city's noise hummed faintly from above. Car horns, echoes, faraway sirens. Beneath the bridge, it felt like time had paused for two people the world had forgotten. Tolani woke to the soft scrape of sweeping. Olu was already outside, clearing the space around the hut with a small bunch of palm fronds. "Good morning," she said, stepping out, her wrapper tied neatly. He looked up, smiling. "You slept well." "Yes, thank you." "You?" "I watched the sunrise," he replied simply. She fetched water from the stream behind the hut and washed her face. The water was cool and smelled faintly of salt. When she returned, Olu was boiling water in a blackened pot over a small fire. "You don't have to do everything," he said gently. "I want to," she replied. "Doing things keeps me sane." He watched her pour Gary into a bowl, add salt and hot water, then stir slowly. The smell of roasted dried fish mixed with smoke from the fire. When they sat to eat, the food was plain, but to Tolani it tasted like safety. Afterward, she cleaned the hut, humming softly under her breath. Olu sat outside with a small notebook in his hand, writing carefully. She noticed and smiled. "You can write." He looked up. "Of course. Can't you?" She shook her head shyly. "Uncle stopped me from going to school after primary 6. Olu nodded thoughtfully. "If you want, I can teach you." Her eyes brightened. "Really? Everyone deserves to read and write," he said. That evening, as the sun lowered into the lagoon, their lesson began. Olu drew letters on the dirt with a stick. "Start with your name." Tolani. Tolani copied slowly, lips moving as she traced each one. "Good," he said softly. "Again." She repeated it until her hand stopped shaking. Then she looked up, smiling. "Tolani. That's me." Olu chuckled quietly. "Perfect." Days turned into weeks. Life under the bridge was hard but peaceful. They found small ways to survive. Olu traded scrap and old chargers for food. Tolani cooked, cleaned, and fetched water. At night they sat under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. One night she asked, "Why do you always stare at the sky?" He smiled faintly. "Because it doesn't judge." She nodded. "You speak like someone who used to live another life." He paused, eyes on the horizon. "Maybe I did." For a while they said nothing. Only the gentle sound of the water filled the silence. Under the wide bridge, where others saw dirt and despair, Tolani began to see hope, one small, steady flame that refused to die. It began with a wind. Not the gentle kind that played with the water surface, but one that tore through the trees and rattled the zinc roof of the hut like angry fists. Tolani looked up from the fire she was tending. The sky had turned gray too quickly, the clouds thick and restless. "Olu," she called softly, "the rain's coming." He stepped outside, squinting toward the lagoon. Pack the food things inside. It'll be rough tonight. Within minutes, the first drops fell. Heavy, angry, unforgiving. The sound on the roof was deafening. Water poured through the holes, forming puddles across the floor. "Olu, the mat!" Tolani shouted, rushing to drag it away from the corner where rain gushed in. "I've got it," he said, placing a basin under the biggest leak. But no matter how they moved, the storm found another path in. The small wooden shelf broke under pressure, spilling onions and dried fish onto the wet floor. "Oh no!" Tolani cried, trying to save what she could. "Leave it," Olu said, but she shook her head, voice firm. "If I stop now, we'll sleep in mud." Lightning flashed across the sky, filling the hut with blinding white. For a heartbeat, everything froze, her drenched hair clinging to her face, Olu's shirt soaked through, water dripping from his chin. When the rain finally slowed, they sat on the mat, soaked, cold but still breathing. Tolani leaned her head against the wall, eyes half closed. "You don't complain," Olu said quietly. She gave a small smile. "Crying doesn't change the roof." He looked at her for a long moment. "You deserve so much more than this." Tolani didn't answer. Her throat was tight. Later that night, after they'd eaten the last of the bread from his bag, Olu sat outside again, facing the lagoon. The moonlight caught his face, softening his expression. Tolani watched from the doorway. He looked different, calm but burdened, like a man hiding too many truths. She whispered into the dark, "Who are you really, Olu?" The next morning, she found him chopping wood beside the stream. There was a small cut above his eyebrow, fresh. "What happened?" He smiled weakly. "Nothing. Some boys on the way to the market wanted to take my bag." "You fought them?" He shrugged. "I've seen worse." Tolani cleaned the wound with a damp cloth. "You always act like nothing can hurt you." He looked at her. "Because pain doesn't scare me anymore." "It should," she said softly. "You're still human." He smiled faintly. "You're the only one who's told me that." The wind carried the smell of the lagoon between them. Neither spoke again, but something shifted, an unspoken truth floating in the silence, waiting for the right day to rise. The days after the storm passed quietly. The air felt cleaner, as though the rain had washed the dust from both the city and their hearts. Tolani and Olu fell into a rhythm, fetching water, trading small items, cooking whatever little they could afford. Their days were simple, but each one stitched a kind of fragile peace between them. One evening, when the sun melted into the horizon and the bridge lights began to blink awake, Tolani sat beside Olu on the flat stone overlooking the lagoon. The water shimmered gold, rippling softly under the breeze. "Do you ever miss your old life?" she asked. Olu was quiet for a long time. His eyes followed the water. "Sometimes," he said finally. "But I don't miss the lies that came with it." "What lies?" "The kind that wear fine suits and smile while planning your downfall." Tolani studied him. "You talk like someone who used to have everything." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I did. Maybe I left it all behind." Her curiosity stirred. "Why?" He sighed, turning toward her. "Because I wanted to know if goodness still exists. People can love without reason. If kindness survives in a world that only values money." She blinked, unsure if he was joking. "So, you live under this bridge to find that out?" He nodded slightly. "You think it's foolish?" Tolani shook her head slowly. "No. Just sad that the world made you doubt it." The silence stretched. The sound of distant traffic hummed above them. Then she asked softly, "And did you find it?" Olu's gaze met hers. "I did. The day you gave me food when you had nothing." Her breath caught. The sincerity in his tone made her chest ache. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. "Yes, you did," he said. "You saw a man everyone else ignored." The words lingered like the scent of rain on dry ground. Tolani looked away, blinking fast. "Olu, who were you before all this?" He hesitated, then smiled gently. Someone I'm not proud of. Someone who needed to lose everything to learn how to see. Tolani's eyes softened. I think everyone deserves a second chance. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. Even me. She nodded. Especially you. A warm wind blew between them, carrying the faint smell of roasted corn from a faraway stall. For the first time, Olu's guarded smile faded completely. There was something vulnerable in his eyes, something human. That night, as the moon climbed high, Tolani wrote her name in the sand again. Then, she looked at it and smiled. For the first time, she wasn't ashamed of who she was. Under the bridge, beside the water that carried the city's secrets, two lost souls were slowly finding their way back to life. The next morning began like any other. A soft breeze rolled off the lagoon, carrying the smell of wet sand and fried akara from the nearby stalls. Tolani hummed quietly as she swept outside the hut, sunlight glinting off the water. Inside, Olu packed a small black nylon bag. I'm going to the next village, he said. There's a boy who sells scrap metal. I'll see if he can help fix the roof. Tolani smiled faintly. Be careful. He nodded, tapping his walking stick lightly on the ground as he left. She cleaned the hut, fetched water, and even patched a crack in the wall with mud. Time passed slowly, the way it does when silence is too long. The sun climbed high, then began to fall. Still Olu did not return. By evening the breeze had changed, carried worry. Tolani sat by the doorway, her eyes on the dusty path that curved toward the bridge. Every few minutes she'd rise, stretch her neck to look farther, then sit back down. Night fell. The hut grew darker, lonelier. She lit a small lantern and whispered to herself, maybe he stayed with someone. Maybe he'll come back in the morning. But the morning came, and he didn't. On the second day, Tolani barely ate. The lagoon looked dull, its surface gray and cold. Every sound made her turn sharply. The crunch of gravel, the creak of the bridge, but it was never him. By the third day, fear had replaced patience. She tied her scarf and started walking toward Ikorodu market, heart pounding with every step. When she reached the main road, she found a crowd gathered in front of the Bale's compound. People were pointing and whispering, their voices tangled with disbelief. What's happening? Tolani asked a woman selling oranges. The woman didn't even look at her. Haven't you heard? A rich man entered our village. Tolani frowned. Rich man? 3 big black jeeps. Soldiers and all. They say he's come to see the Bale. Tolani turned to the road. The air trembled with excitement. And then she saw it. Dust swirling behind 3 SUVs moving slowly down the narrow street, tires crushing gravel. Men in suits stepped out first, dark glasses reflecting the sun. Then the door of the first car opened. The man who stepped out was tall, clean-shaven, dressed in a navy suit that shimmered faintly. A gold wristwatch flashed on his wrist. The crowd gasped. Ha! Wait! Someone shouted. No be that man way they live under Third Mainland Bridge. Tolani's heart froze. Ulu. He removed his sunglasses slowly. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found her. Everything else, the noise, the crowd, the disbelief, faded. Her world tilted. The man she had married in shame was standing before her now, reborn in wealth, power and calm. The crowd around the Bale's compound buzzed with disbelief. Phones came out, children shouted, women covered their mouths. The man who once slept under the bridge now stood like royalty. His clean-cut beard glinting in the sunlight. His calm voice commanding silence. My name is Oluwaseun Adebisi, he said clearly. Son of the late Chief Adebisi, founder of Adebisi Energy and Adebisi Foundation. The Bale blinked. We thought you died years ago. Olu smiled faintly. I was missing, not dead. Then he turned toward the crowd. His gaze found Tolani, frozen near the back. Her wrapper fluttered lightly in the breeze. He walked toward her slowly, each step heavy with meaning. When he stopped before her, the world seemed to hold its breath. I'm sorry, he said softly. She shook her head, voice trembling. You lied to me. I hid the truth, he admitted, because I needed to see if real kindness still exists. If love could survive without wealth attached to it. Tears welled in her eyes. Everyone used me. My aunt, my uncle. And now you. He stepped closer. No, Tolani. You saved me. You reminded me what it means to be human. The Bale, sensing the weight of the moment, motioned for silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. Olu reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. Inside lay a silver ring that caught the sunlight like a star. He knelt before her. Will you give me another chance to do this the right way? He asked. Will you be my wife? Not in shame but in honor. The crowd gasped. Some clapped, some cried. Tolani's lips quivered as tears spilled down her face. Yes, she whispered. When Olu stood, he pulled her into his arms. The people erupted in cheers, phones flashing, drums starting somewhere in the distance. As the convoy of black cars rolled back through the village later that evening, Tolani sat beside him, her eyes wide as the city skyline appeared ahead. Shimmering glass, tall towers, golden sunlight. At the Adebisi mansion, marble floors gleamed under chandelier light. She turned slowly, taking it all in, awe mixing with disbelief. Is this real? She asked. Very real, Olu said, smiling gently. You were never meant to be hidden. A few weeks later, Tolani stood before a group of young girls at the new home of Second Chances, a foundation she and Olu built for orphans and abused girls. She handed one of them a notebook and said, Write your name. It's the first step to remembering who you are. That night, in the mansion garden under the soft hum of the city, she leaned against Olu's shoulder. Do you remember that night under the bridge? She asked. He smiled. How could I forget? That's where I found my home. Tolani looked up at the stars, eyes bright. We were broken once. He kissed her forehead. Now we build. And beneath the quiet Lagos sky, the girl who once carried shame finally carried grace. Wow. Bestie, that one touched deep, didn't it? Life really has a funny way of teaching us lessons through people we least expect. If you felt this story like I did, drop a heart in the comments. Make sure you subscribe and join me again for our next gist, because you know your bestie never runs out of stories. Love ya!